All right.
Welcome into Heating Up, episode 14. Sorry, it's been a little while. We got life in the way a little bit, but since we're doing this audio also, I guess I need to go ahead and introduce the room. We've got Cody, Drew, Riley, and guest starring Maverick Austin Smith. Mav, how you doing? Good, good. All right, moving on then. He might have the worst internet because he's frozen right now, so we'll move on. But we just kind of wanted to do a little recap of some Alabama and Auburn basketball after a disappointing weekend, I guess we should say. So let's kind of jump straight into those games a little bit. And we can go into as much detail or as little as you guys want to. But I figured we'd start with Auburn because another last-second loss. I guess another. It's only happened a couple times, but I'm sure if you're listening to this, you know. But Auburn lost 63-62 at Florida. I think the big talking point is going to be late game execution, and we'll jump into that a little bit later. But I want to start with Jabari Smith first. Cody, if you go back to the Vandy game and then this Florida game, is this as well as Jabari Smith has played all year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like to see a little more, design plays to give Jabari the ball, especially down stretch. But as far as going into the half and coming out of half, he's been phenomenal. It's just catching a wrap around 15 feet. I'm 6'10", 6 whatever. I can shoot over you, and there's good shots he's getting. And also he's shooting really well in transition from three. It's very promising to see that type of shot going down by him because, like in 2019 when we made that Final Four push, a lot of times when stuff was getting bogged down, we would give the ball to Chuman, just say, give us a bucket. And that was, to me, as far as the stats being really good, I like just being able to give the ball to Jabari and him getting a good shot and hitting them at a high clip.
Drew, I want to throw it to you next on Jabari because we know he's been just almost an elite shooter this year, which he's probably been a little better than expected, honestly. But the big question mark was, putting it on the floor. And I know Nate Oates came out probably more than any other coach and said, hey, our plan was to make him put it on the floor, which number one has been hard to do apparently, because I'm sure everybody else is trying to do the same thing, but I'm starting to see a little bit more of that. He's getting to the free throw line off the dribble a little bit, and he just seems to be a little bit more comfortable dribbling, not necessarily handling it and starting the break, but catching it at 20 feet. And at least if the guy's all over him, making some kind of move around him. Are you seeing a little bit of growth there?
I am. And I think the reason most coaches like Nate Oates and everybody wants to do that is because, you want to get him out of rhythm. So make him put it on the floor, make him work for a shot as opposed to catching and shooting where he's at his best. Because like you said, he's shooting over 40% from three, he's shooting a high percentage from two. So you just want to make him put it on the floor, make him work for it, maybe take an unorthodox or, send a double team and get out of his hands quick too. But you do see improvements, and we knew this would come. He's got pretty much everything in his package besides ball handling. That's been his biggest question mark. So, of course, coaches are going to try to take advantage of that. But he's a freshman. He's 18. He's going to improve his, flaws. And so far, he's done that throughout the season.
What about you, Riley? We hadn't had you on in a few weeks. What are you seeing out of Jabari now? He's kind of his growth throughout the season. Maybe hit a little slump, maybe got a little tired, not used to playing this many games, and now it seems like he's jumped out of that a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's been the one consistent bright spot for Auburn. Every game he's, averaging. I know the last few games I saw a stat. I think it's around 19 or 20 points a game. So he's been very consistent, but it's tough. It's tough to pick apart his game because he can score in the mid post. He can shoot the three over you. Like Drew said, everybody's game plan is to obviously make him put on the floor, but it's kind of hard when you're 6'10". You can shoot over the defender. I think Florida made him work for some stuff. Some stuff, they're fouling a three-point shooter, and he's a really good free throw shooter. At that point, you just got to live with it. But as far as game planning, I think, he's really, really good. And like Florida and all these other teams are like, let's try to make the other guys beat us. And when Wendell shoots 2 for 10, the other team's going to have a chance. But no, Jabari's been great. He's been good all year, and he'll definitely be, one of the top few draft picks.
So I think we all give Jabari an A+ right now. He's doing everything he can do. He had 28 points in that game. He shot the ball incredibly well against Vandy right before that. Mav, I want to throw this to you a little bit. talking about running your offense through a certain player. And, I feel like Bruce Pearl's getting a lot of grief on not running enough stuff for Jabari or, especially late in the game, but not even late in the game. Talk to me about offenses that really go ISO heavy and go through one guy as opposed to, hey, we're just going to run our stuff. And if the ball hits you, and we'll run some stuff for you, but more in general, we're going to do what we do and hope that you can just play off that. Coming from a coaching point of view, how do you balance those two things? Because I think that's kind of the big question mark right now.
So planning defensively, I think that it's easier to prep for teams that play in ISO through one guy. What makes it very fun to watch about Auburn is like you have 2 to 3 elite passers on the floor with those 5. Having Zep back, and then Walker Kessler. He's one of those great guys that you put it in his hands. He can find the open guys, open shooters. I think Bruce is doing the right thing, which he's like on levels and levels and levels above all of us. So their prepping can be a lot better, but I think that he's doing the right things because of his personnel. I think personnel goes a long way there. I think Walker Kessler makes a huge impact when it touches his hands and finding the open guy, moving around. But if you have to go ISO, he does have that to fall back to with Jabari. And he's getting a lot of the references that the KD, and I said that I think my first time on this show. He's very KD-ish to me. And I believe we're starting to see that. And like Drew said, just to piggyback off him, just the only question mark's the handles, man. And I think it's good for them to hit kind of a wall right here to say, hey, like, here's our challenge and here's what we need to work on going forward.
And to stay on Jabari for just one more minute, I've been really impressed with his competitiveness on defense too. That especially when things are kind of going back and forth, he seems to really lock in and play really good defense. He's getting better and better there. So I really don't have much more to say on that. But rewatching the games today, you watch the games for the first time, the Alabama-Kentucky game and the Auburn-Florida game, and you're kind of wrapped up in the emotion of the game, and then you can kind of go back once you already know the result. And one thing that I found that I'm going to relate to both of these games is that with Kentucky, they know where their shots are coming from. Like, it seems like everybody kind of plays within their role. They know where the shots are coming from. And so Alabama wasn't getting these transition breaks, especially in the second half, really not even as much in the first half. They just shot the ball really well, but they weren't getting these easy buckets in transition. And the thing was happening to Auburn was they were making some crazy turnovers, and that was leading to Florida getting transition threes, and you're not set up, and the Appleby guy got hot, and that's just what happened. I think that, I don't know if that's just a Calipari is really hard on those guys, but I think it has to do with, they're only playing 6 or 7 guys, and, Alabama's scrapping, trying to find their right guys. Auburn's got a bunch of guys they're trying to rotate in and figure out how to work. So I was just anybody had any opinion on how the shot you take on offense or your game plan on offense, so you're not turning the ball over, can affect your defense so much. And it makes your defense look bad when like Walker Kessler switched out on the point guard, when he's not supposed to be there, but it was because KD threw the ball to somebody and they got to run and go and you can't match up. Hey, did y'all see that in the Auburn-Florida game at all? And did y'all see that in the Alabama-Kentucky game at all?
Yeah, I think that's kind of Nate Oates' whole thing. That's his whole game plan, disorient you on defense and get you out in transition and make you have to play transition defense or pick up with their mismatches and then attack mismatches. And of course, when you're playing fast, it's going to happen to you too. But I think that's Nate Oates' whole game plan is let's play like dogs on defense, get turnovers, get into transition, and make that team play on their heels the whole game. Because like you said, it's tough to guard. Like when you have a Kessler switch on Appleby, that's tough for any 6'10", 7-foot guy to guard. A quick, athletic guard like him, especially when he's shooting 50% from three. But yeah, I agree. It's really tough to guard, and I think you saw that more in the second half with Kentucky, where we were starting missing shots. They get into transition, then there goes Kalen Grady for a wide open three. There goes Keon Brooks with a pull up jumper or something like that, and it was tough to guard, tough to get stops on.
Yeah, I really like that take, Alex. So something I know that Auburn really struggles with, like you said. So it's like, hey, is that our guards night? Is KD going to go off? Is Wendell going to go off? No, man, they're not really playing that well. Maybe so Jabari is going to have a good game. Yeah, maybe not. He's not hitting shots. So maybe when you get pick and roll with Kessler more. And Auburn does a lot of trying to appease everybody and getting shots from all three levels of the game. And in contrast, if you look at like Kentucky and Alabama, maybe that was better that Wheeler and Ty was out for him, because they were like, Grady's just going to get buckets from 3-point line. We just know that we're going to get this guy. Sheboy's going to get in the middle. He's going to pass out to Grady. Grady's going to hit it. He's going to shoot 40 from the 3-point line. It's simplistic. And I draw back to the 2019 team because we had some success with Auburn, but we always knew that our outside shot was what our bread and butter was. Auburn, I feel like, is struggling to find their bread and butter. But also, in more optimistic lens, I feel like that we are seeing promising stuff for when stuff starts bogging down in March, like when it starts getting sloggy, and Jabari's hitting really high end shots, and that's kind of what we need to set us over the top. We need to be better at figuring out, our guards aren't working in this. This isn't not our guard. This isn't not a game that our guards are going to flourish in. We need to get Kessler and Jabari more touches in the middle. Maybe even get Jalen in there, play make from the post. I feel like we're doing a lot of trying to make everybody happy, and it's carrying on too far into the game.
But sticking on the Auburn side, I mean, say Wynn finds Walker Kessler right there and he scores, or say the Arkansas game, he hits the shot. Are you even nitpicking the rest of the game, or is it all just based on that last second result, and how much of the game is actually even different? You know what I mean?
I will say I would, a lot, like you said earlier, Bruce is getting a lot of flack for, not playing through Jabari Moore. My issue isn't playing through him more in the flow of the offense. Mine is when Auburn goes on these 4 or 5 minute droughts, why not just get the ball to him and let him try to spark something, a mid-range post up, or, maybe run some action for him to get open three, just something to where maybe he can get you a bucket in that drought and get something flowing for Auburn on offense. Because that seems to be y'all's biggest downside, is that y'all go on these long droughts without scoring, and your defense is having to work to, to stay in the game. Kind of like what Alabama did a lot last year. We'd go on droughts without scoring, and our defense would have to pick up and get stops just to, keep it close and all that. But
we'll staying on that. I agree with you, and I think a couple times it's just late in the game when we don't call timeouts. We're going to play through our point guards like we do the rest of the game, and it's up to them to make the play. But they did call. Well, they didn't really call a timeout. The ball got knocked out of bounds, so they end up using one. I think if Auburn gets that ball in transition and KD goes and scores that bucket, and the game's over.
Yeah, that was 100% favored Florida, that going out of bounds.
Do you wonder, Riley, let me throw this one to you. Do you wonder, say you've got 7.5 seconds and Auburn draws up something for Jabari to touch it on the wing. They were face guarding him. You could see it on the court, but say they get him the ball in some tough spot. Do you wonder that is an easier place to go double than a ball handler with speed going off a high ball screen? And so maybe they were just worried with 7 seconds. That's not much time. If they double for Jabari, who we've already seen is not a fantastic passer right now, to find somebody and then a one more swing into a shot, is that just maybe not enough time, or is that even in consideration at all?
Yeah, I think that's in consideration, but I think Bruce is thinking in the huddle, just like everybody in the whole arena, everybody watching the play, the ball's going to Jabari. Florida knows the ball's going to Jabari, so that's why they're face guarding. If he gets it, I'm not saying they double. They probably, but I would run 2 people at him. I mean, he's made tough shots all night, make someone else make a big shot. But I think it was a pick and roll with Kessler and Green, and I think it was honestly just trying to let him make a play. I mean, they've been good all year in the pick and roll game, so I guess go to your bread and butter. But I mean, I understand Jabari's going off and get him the ball and make him run 2 at him. But I don't know. I think in the at the end of it, Bruce. I mean, everybody knew the ball was going to Jabari. I think Florida had something. I bet they were, like you said, double him or do something to get the ball out of his hands. But I don't know. It's tough because, like you said, it was just that late second, and then they kind of trapped, and he got in the air and just threw it away. But I don't know. It's tough to say.
I think if the arc, go ahead.
I was going to say that's what you want. Like after seeing how the Arkansas game kind of played out, the one guy on that whole Auburn team I do not want to touch the ball is Jabari.
Right.
You know, I don't care if he's double teamed or what. I don't want him to shoot the ball. So I want Wendell in that ball screen with a short clock because he can't run it out and, you know, get a good read off the pick and roll and go shoot a floater or lob. But he's going to have to make a quick decision. And Wendell hasn't really proved to make great quick decisions late in the game like that. So
I think if the Arkansas game doesn't happen, that Wendell Green takes that three when they back up just a little bit, he pulls it. But after that experience of missing it one time, he thinks, I probably shouldn't do that. And so to me, like,
he about pulled
if
it.
I'm Bruce Pearl in the huddle, I am putting confidence into Wendell Green and say, hey, if they back up, you knock that thing down. I don't care what happened at Arkansas. And I wonder if anybody said that to him because he looked hesitant when they didn't do exactly what he thought they were going to do on that ball screen. They didn't hedge it really. They just kind of stepped up and guarded from both sides. And then for some reason, Alan Flanagan's guy, he starts circling behind. And so it's actually his guy that clogs it all up. That was very strange.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure that's why he was so hesitant because Flanagan brought his guy over. And he had a longer defender, and he was kind of right where Wendell was about to pull up from.
Mm-hmm.
But and I also think Wendell didn't shoot the ball good all game. That could have played into maybe that decision too, because I doubt it was confidence because that dude just had confidence all year, regardless where he's at or what he's shooting.
And then we could also talk about how the screen was never set. It was a weird timing from the beginning. It was like they wanted to go set it real high, and then he didn't, and he just kind of ran and didn't know what to do. Like, I don't know, but I just say, hey, if two other things don't happen in the game like that, then you're not so worried about the very end. I mean, you got down 8 with like a minute and a half left and somehow came back, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, I don't take that much from it. I think it's a learning experience, like y'all said, and like Mav said, you'd rather go ahead and go through it now and be able to talk about it and fix it before you got to have it. One more Auburn thing before we go. Go ahead, Riley.
No, you got something, Mav?
Yeah, I got one more Auburn thing before I want to jump off. Go ahead, Mav.
I was just going to say, like, that goes back to discovering identity. You know, you got some freshmen that's coming in, some transfers, and they've had the spring and the summer together, some of them, sure, and then, you know, early fall. But that comes with, you know, chemistry, camaraderie, and I think, like, that plays a huge factor into those moments in late game situations. So that was my 2 cents on it.
No,
do we have an issue? Does Auburn have an issue of who is the guy to take that last shot?
Yes, because there's too many guys that think they can, and they probably have the ability.
Yeah,
I was about to say it seems like because you know we know who the opponents think should take it, but it seems like Auburn's confused on who they think should take it. You know, is it Wendell? Is it Jabari? Is it KD?
It's a double-sided sword. You have these guards that we praise, like in Wendell and KD, that are never scared of the moment. Even though Wendell didn't play or didn't execute in Florida, but they're not scared of the moment, and it's hard to tell them to dial it in. Hey, we got Jabari, give the ball to Jabari. Where it's a double-sided sword because you don't want. That's what makes those guys great, and they're going to win you a lot of basketball games. But it's also like, hey, also how do you have that conversation with? Let's just give the ball to the 6'10" guy that can shoot over everybody. You know, it's.
Like Drew said, give the ball to the guy that everybody else doesn't want you to give the ball to.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yes,
at least try one game just to see if it works.
As a player, they're smart enough to know, like, this dude's probably going to go top 3. He is a generational talent. He's had 26 on the road, or however, 28.
28.
Like,
80% from 3 this game.
But you can't tell me KD ever has that conversation in his head. He thinks he's the best player on the court at all times, and you need that guy. You need that guy.
Dude. That dude was scored if they'd have given the
That's
basketball.
what I'm saying. Like,
you need that guy, but you also gotta he has to have the realization, like, hey, he's superior. Like, that's the superior guy.
I don't think that's really a problem.
Right.
I think that makes you question what to draw up, but when it comes down to it, I think Jabari's the leader of the team. I don't think anybody's got a problem with it.
Yeah, I think, and that's why Bruce is getting paid a lot of money, and that's why he's as good as he is. He's going to have the conversation and make them mesh that way that we're just discussing. But also, you're dealing with these kids in the moment. There's a lot. I don't know. It's easy for us to
be more mad if my guys didn't want it.
Right, exactly. And I feel like Auburn has a lot of those guys, which is a good thing and a bad thing sometimes. And we've seen the bad thing.
And I don't necessarily think it's the players the issue. I think it's who's the coach drawing the play up for. You know,
I agree with you, Drew.
Y'all have had timeouts both times to set up a play. who's Bruce Pearl calling the play for? So
Good point.
It's more on, does the coaches realize what – I know they know what they have, but do they – I guess y'all have had 2 trial errors. Now y'all can kind of mess around and draw something else up. But
I would think so too. And I will say, I think they should have had a pretty big lesson. We got the ball with 30 seconds at halftime and didn't even get a shot off, dribbled it off, and Wynn made I don't know what happened. It was a disaster though, and didn't even get a shot off with 30 seconds. So that should have been something. But like you said, Drew, if you call a timeout and draw it up, nobody's going to question what you go execute right then.
Yeah. I was, that's a tough situation when you're coming off a timeout. You're running a specialty play. Like, hey, I have 4 options.
I agree. It did seem like there weren't enough options.
Yeah, and it's hard, but when you got a guy that shoots, a certain percentage from the perimeter or whatever it may be, slashing guards to a drive, like that's a tough scenario right there in the heat of the moment. Like you gotta have everything clicking right there for those guys. But I'm giving it to Jabari 100%.
But it's funny. There's a screenshot. There's a screenshot, and I know it's a lot harder when you're 5'9" and the speed of the game. But there's a screenshot where, if there was no hesitation, Walker Kessler was open if you just threw it up, and he'd dunk that thing and you won the game.
I thought that.
It's a screenshot, and those can be, misleading.
Like 0.001 of the second.
No, there was some time.
That's like
the
guys watching a NFL football game, and you see it from a replay, and like, dude, there's a guy wide open on the other side of the field that you're not looking at.
Right.
Meanwhile, he's getting rushed by 6'5", 290-pounders that run a 4.5.
Well, sure. If Wendell would have just shot the ball, I'd have been like, well, that's a guy that's –
you might get the offensive rebound.
Yeah, I mean, just make a definitive move, whether it be shooting or whatever. We'll live with the result.
There was just
nothing really happened.
You got a 7-footer around from the goal. At worst, throw it up and let him try to tip it in or whatever.
Of course, you also have a 7-footer in front of you too. So I think that's 5'9" against a 7-foot. It's kind of hard to make that pass too.
Yeah, and that probably is why he probably would have done it, I guess, if Castleton wasn't in front of him. But
I want to say about this team, because I know this got brought up briefly by Cody.
God.
No. This was just recently about comparing to the 2019 Auburn team. Obviously, having played against them and knowing how dynamic they were, whether it was Harper shooting threes, Brown shooting threes. I mean, they were consistent. Purefoy, Malcolm Moore stepping out, Okiki. I think, obviously, Jabari was better than any players on that team. No question about it. But do you guys think sometimes he does so much ISO? He's such a good ISO player, can shoot over him, that a lot of times other players are standing and watching. Do you think that has an effect? And when he gets hot, I mean, you may go a couple trips where he's just ISO ball. There's no cutting, there's no movement, and he's going to get his bucket. I mean, he's getting buckets, don't get me wrong, but also, I mean, the rest of the team was 1 of 9 from 3. He was 4 of 5. He scored 62 points.
Well,
you think that makes it stagnant, easy to guard?
That's a really good point, Riley, because so the thing that we've nitpicked on Jabari, and it's a major nitpick, but his passing ability, like you said, is it kind of, you get him the ball and everything kind of slows down, or everybody quits moving. It's like, Jabari, you just get us a bucket. Chuma, when we really got hot in March, Chuma was making a lot of really good reads and finding people in the opposite corner. Of course, we also had better 3-point shooters on that team too, so it helped. But he was making really good basketball decisions as far as finding when the double team would come, he would just pop it off to the open guy. And I would love to see Jabari develop that.
Before you finish that, I think that team was more analytical about getting guys where they need to be to make the best play. Like you got this group of guys that Auburn
because
has,
you had to.
Exactly. Okay, so like you can roll it out there. It's like, hey, you got 5 guys who can go hoop. Like, go hoop. That team I feel was more analytical in that aspect, and I think they executed it more from my eyes. Just looking at that team, because I didn't watch as many games as y'all did, but that's my perspective on that.
Yeah,
but I'm saying even
I was going to talk on that too, because Al, we talked about this earlier in the season with Quinterly. When his one-on-one ball, ISO ball, is really fun to watch, but it doesn't get everybody involved, and that's why I agree. I was talking earlier about, I don't think y'all should go strictly ISO with Jabari. I think you should just go ISO with him when you haven't scored in 4 or 5 minutes, to end a drought. But I agree. Going completely ISO to Jabari, even though you might get a bucket and you might get a few buckets, it doesn't get everybody involved unless you teach your offense how to move without the ball and cut and stuff like that.
I'm just saying guarding Okiki on the side post and Bryce Brown and Harper, and you got Purefoy setting screens on the backside and Kiki's thrown over the top, or he's posting up, but at the same time, Brown and Harper are moving. Like you got to be aware of those guys. One, because they're going to get behind you and score, or you got to pay attention to Okiki because he's a good enough player he can score. I don't know. I just think that, not saying this team can't be, but the 19 team was so dynamic, and the fact they shot the ball so well, it put so much pressure on everything else.
And like you said, they knew how to move without the ball and set screens on the other side of the court. And all that.
Well, I mean, they were a veteran team that played together 3 years. They built that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like y'all were saying,
putting the guys in the right spots.
Right. So this kind of feeds into my bigger question that will also go along with moving to Kentucky, Alabama. It's kind of what I hit on earlier is, okay, so say Wendell Green's not playing fantastic. Basically, what I'm getting at is what we figured out is that Auburn is an elite defensive team, and offense is going to come and go with how they shoot it, with how Jabari plays, really with how Wendell plays, to be honest. Jabari's going to pretty much give you what he gives you. Kessler's going to pretty much gives you what he gives you. Is KD getting hot that game or whatever? But what are y'all's thoughts on, so how I was harping on Kentucky's defense is easier for them because they're not turning the ball over on offense, especially against Alabama when they didn't have Wheeler and Washington out there. You knew where the shots were coming. It was very basic in a way, but there were no, Bruce calls them shots. He's like, when your team takes shots where you go, everybody stands there and they don't know where to go and all that. So my question is, could Auburn, and I know it's kind of late to do this, but Zep Jasper is elite defensively and just average offensively. Could you play up to your defense more and play him, and then you still can run some stuff through Jabari, you can run some stuff through Flanagan, you can still run some stuff with Kessler, but you are building your team through your best defensive unit, and then you're letting offense kind of get it where it gets it. Is that, if you're coaching, is that even under consideration?
I'm saying after Missouri, Georgia, and some of these close games, that's what it's going to come down to, is a one-possession game. So you better be good in late possessions if you're going to do that, because where Auburn was so good is getting turnovers and getting out on transition, and obviously that's the easy way for them to score from defense to offense. But they're going to have to be really, really good on those when you're down one or tied with a couple seconds left, because they're good defensively. But if you score in the 60s, I mean, there's not too many college teams that can't score in the 60s. I mean, I don't care how good you are defensively. A lot of people are going to get to the 60s. So, I mean, you can, but I think it's just a tougher game for Auburn. Ultimately, when Auburn scores in the 80s,
that feeds into Wendell coming off the bench and being the sixth man like Quinterly last year and coming and being a change of pace. But then when it gets nitty gritty closing time, you have your absolute best defensive unit, which includes Zep Jasper out there. And then, to be honest, there's a little less confusion on what you're doing offensively because you're running ISO stuff, you're running a pick and pop, you're getting Kessler the ball, something like that. You know, I think it could simplify some things a little bit. And if Wynn comes out and he's cooking, then you just keep rolling, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely going to have to find an answer because, like you said, Auburn's at their best when Wendell is on, when he's shooting well. But
offensively.
But when he struggles, like against Florida,
he's struggling.
Where's your offense coming from? And when teams like Florida, who are very good defensively and kind of challenge offensively,
and Missouri was just like that,
they're going to slow you down, make you play, half court basketball. And so your possessions are limited. You don't have near the amount of possessions as opposed to playing an Alabama team that wants to get out and run. And, if Wendell misses a three, well, he'll probably get another shot here in about,
that's why I think Alabama is such a good matchup for Auburn. Like, I just think that's a really good matchup.
I think a bad matchup is next Saturday when Auburn goes to Tennessee. It's at Tennessee 1, but Tennessee will run that shot clock down under 10 every single possession. And they're going to take somewhat of a quality shot, or they're going to get the last shot before, there's not going to be a turnover usually. Right. But I think that type of team that slows Auburn down is so hard because they don't get in transition much. But a team like Alabama that's struggling defensively this year, Auburn's they can compete with that just because of how good they are defensively, but it's just depending what offense you get.
That's what I'm just saying. I mean, you just feed into that and be the best defensive team you can possibly be. I don't know.
So let me play devil's advocate. How many times have we seen the Wendell Kessler pick and roll just absolutely kill teams down the stretch coming out of the third quarter? You don't get that with Zep or KD. I love those guards, and they bring a different aspect to the game. But when that is cooking, and you can scheme it, and what you guys have just said, if you want to take that away, you can take that away, I guess. But when it is an available option, that is just deadly. I mean, there's just not much you can do about it.
I will say though, Cody, that was a hit early on in SEC play, but now you're seeing teams adjust to that pick and roll because they know that's Wendell and Kessler's bread and butter out there. Like if we stop this, 5 wide open oops during the game, that's 5 possessions that making them shoot the ball somewhere else. And you've seen teams defensively adjusting to guarding that. And then that's why you're having to find other areas to get shots up.
But there have been times where Wendell has finished those possessions where he was finishing, and he has still had good games. He wasn't hitting from deep,
He's just a streaky guy.
Yeah, he's just streaky. He's just really it boils down to him being streaky and what kind of offensive production you're gonna get from whether outside or inside and finishing when they're taking the lob away from Kessler. But I'm just saying, Wendell just adds so much to us offensively when he's cooking. He's streaky, like Matt just said.
I agree, but for all our Alabama listeners, to make it a football analogy, what I'm saying is, so even if Najee Harris is a really, really good player, you figured out that your passing offense is how you win football games. And so even though he's a great thing to have, when it gets down to it, you need to play to your strengths. And just because it's one player – I think that's kind of the Wendell Zep thing. Like Wendell's a good, use him in spurts, but when it gets down to it, I'm not sure we shouldn't be grinding out with our best defensive lineup possible. I just think it's a good problem to have.
I'm playing devil's
advocate about in February, and I think it's a good thing to have.
Yeah,
and that's a 50-50 thing too. That's like a KYP. Know your personnel. Like, hey, is he on or not? Is he not on or not? And then you make your adjustment. And you play from there.
But the only thing that gets into is you want your guys to play with ultimate confidence, and if you're kind of feeling that out all the time. You don't want to suck
anybody out. Yeah, you don't want to suck that life out of anybody.
Right.
If Jabari is playing well, and it's like, hey,
throw him the effing ball.
Throwing the ball, dude. Like, that's an easy click.
So let's use this to springboard into that Alabama-Kentucky game a little bit. I did rewatch that today as well because we were watching it in Huntsville and a bunch of Alabama fans, and I was just trying to be nice or whatever. But I was fine with Alabama winning. Yeah, I was good with that. Let's throw to Drew first. Just tale of two halves, kind of. From my rewatch, I could watch and see how tough some of those shots Alabama was making in the first half, and how Kentucky was getting some pretty good looks, and you could kind of tell how that thing might flip a little bit later in the game. What did you see? It was such a big difference in the first half and the second half.
Just the biggest difference was, we were hitting shots in the first half, and then they were hitting shots in the second half. They were hitting shots in the first half too. We never really got any stops. Kind of like what Oates said in his post-game presser was, even though we was up 10, he was still telling the team that we're not going to win this game unless you play defense. We could be up 20 right now, but because we can't get stops, we're just swapping 3s and 2s right now. So what happens when those 3s go dry and they're still hitting 2s? Well, you saw what happened. They made they closed a 10, 13 point gap and went up 1 going into halftime. And then second half, Kellen Grady just went insane. And, Davion Mintz was banking in 15-foot jumpers and that's going to happen when you're playing on the road at a team's environment. You got the crowd into it. Those kind of things are going to happen. And it really just all boils down to being able to get defensive stops for this Bama team. The efficiency wise, this is the best offense Bama's had in probably like the last 17 years, I think. But defensive wise, they're bad. They're like 77 in KenPom or whatever it is. And then it comes down to, we can't win big games because good teams are going to be able to score regardless. But if you can get stops in between baskets and stuff like that to help you build a lead, you got to be able to do it. And we wasn't able to Saturday, and we haven't been able to in these last few weeks either.
Riley, let me throw that defensive question to you, Because I mean, honestly, when you were a player, it seems like it kind of came natural to you just to lock in and play hard, and you knew you had to. Is that something that can be fixed personally with a player in the middle or late in the season, or is that something that is God given? You either got it or you don't, or kind of talk about that, because the big thing we talked about all year.
Don't even lie, Riley. It wasn't God
Natos
given.
will come in here and
We saw
say,
you
you
in high
know,
school.
we're gonna have to play harder. We're gonna have to play harder. We're gonna have to play harder. And he's like, I don't know what to do. Like one of the beat writers asked him, like, so how exactly do you make that happen, basically? And he said, look, I would tell you if I knew. He said, we do the blue collar points, and I'm praising guys that play hard. I'm putting guys in the game that play hard. I'm taking guys out that don't, but until they decide, it's not much I can do. He didn't say that exactly, but that's pretty much what he was implying. What are your thoughts there?
No, I just think defense is it's all effort. I mean, it's no skill. I mean, it does take, I shouldn't say no skill, but it's really, it's not like offensively where you got to be able to dribble the ball, you got to be able to shoot the ball. Defense is literally about communications, the number one thing. I don't know if they communicate well. I haven't been to any practices or, you know, been on the court or in the timeouts, but there's got to be a sense of urgency. There's got to be some leader to step up. And like you said, it's not that we can't score the ball. So I think this is very correctable if somebody would just step up and be a vocal leader and like coming down is like, to the team, we got to get a stop. I mean, they can't score the ball every single time or we're going to get beat.
Have you had experiences, though, where in the middle of the year, a player, it'll just change for them and they'll figure out, hey, I have to do this personally for us to win?
Yeah, I go back because to Colin. So Colin came in, and it wasn't really at the end of the year. It clicked, I mean, pretty much through non-conference. Colin came in, obviously, as a 5-star, and he was really, really good, really, really talented offensively. He was, I mean, he was above everybody else as far as skill. I mean, we had a pretty good class with Herb and JP and all them, but you could tell that he was a one and done talent. But at the same time, he wasn't listening really to nobody at first. But then halfway through the year, he knew how hard it was, or even in non-conference when we played some tough games, he knew how hard it was, and people were coming at him every single night. So he had to be locked in and defensively. But the thing about Colin was he was a competitor. So he was kind of like Jabari. I know Jabari in the Florida game, if someone scored, if you know they got a stop on him, he's coming back trying to get a stop on him. I know Bruce talked about him being the ultimate competitor. That's the way Colin was. And that's the way, I'm not saying that they don't have an ultimate competitor. Everybody tries to win, obviously. But at some point, this Alabama team's got it, whether it's Keon, whether it's JQ or Shaq, who's been there, he's proven himself, or even Gurley, who's transferring in. If they want to win and go far, they got to play defense. I know it's Nate and Petway and all the coaches are harping on it, but at the same time, it's got to be, someone's got to take, leadership and set the example.
To add on to that, Riley, so you watch Herb in the NBA. I mean, he just has some dog in him. Like when they back up, when he's dribbling the ball and he backs up, Herb moves up to him. You don't see that a lot going on in the NBA. Like, obviously, he's on a lot of, boards and stuff as top rookie or whatever because he's impacting the game and stuff. But you've seen that in college. There was just a lot of dog in him. And we were messaging back and forth at Petty, like Tom Petty.
Yeah.
Tom Petty.
Good God.
R.I.P. Tom Petty.
That boy's a dog.
But even Petty, when he was hitting outside, but his senior year, he developed in such a good defender. Like they just bought into Nate Oates' system. And they just had a lot of dog in them. And I just don't see that from this team. And I thought, early on in the season, I seen a lot of that from Gary and stuff. And Keon Ellis you don't have to be a dog when he plays as good defense as he did, especially this last game on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. But the team.
That's how he recruits, though.
Yeah, but the team identity is just lacking a little, I don't know, blue collar mentality from.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. And if you go back and watch last year's game, I know we bring it up, or even Petty was a lot better defensively. He had to lock in, and he was more vocal than Herb was. Herb wasn't, Herb was vocal when he needed to be like, hey, let's get a stop. Come on. And you could just see in his eyes, like he cared so much, but like Herb would be guarding his player and then they passed it to somebody else and he would drive by his man. Herb would slide over and take a charge. There's just, I can't tell you how many times there's been a weak side charge drawn on the ball. Yeah, they've drawn on ball charges, but it's just like little stuff. Charges seem little, but like Cambridge, when he comes in and draws a charge, I saw Jalen Williams against Tennessee the other night.
Yeah.
He drew 4
Jalen
charges
Williams
in the
against
first
everybody.
half. The first half, and that's such a momentum changer. But at the same time, it's like somebody's got to step up. And
one of y'all talked about, and maybe Riley talked about offensively how Auburn just, or maybe Mav just they haven't been through it. It's a bunch of transfers and new guys that haven't been through it. Is that possible defensively too? I mean, I know like to ultimately be a really good defensive team, you got to have the rotations down and know what each other are doing. But is there anything that maybe if a team is together for a little bit longer that they figure it out?
I think you're starting to see a lot of, guys coming into new roles. A lot of people forget the Bama team from last year. Well, 5 of those first 7 players are gone now, and then that was a lot of experience, a lot of guys that have been in big games. And to be honest with you, they kind of hid Shaq and hid JQ last year to where they can just go score and they can play offense. And these other 4 guys are going to lock down and get what we need on defense. Where now this year, we're asking Keon, of course, but we're asking JQ and Shaq to be those guys. Hey, you got to initiate this defense and help us get stops. And I will admit, our first shot defense has been pretty good. It's those not boxing out, watching people try to go rebound. Against Kentucky, even JD, who is a really good rebounder for a guard because he's so explosive. I rewatched today, and there's at least 3 times where he just stands and his guy stands, expecting the ball to come to his side, and he's just going to jump up and get it. Well, the ball bounces a different way, and his guy gets that rebound, and then they get a second chance bucket, and that's what.
So how do you fix that?
I guess we're about to learn because Oates today was saying, "Hey, I don't care what you do, who you are, what position you play. I'm gonna find 5 guys that want to play defense, and they're gonna play. And if you get caught slacking on defense, you're coming out and you sit with me the rest of the game or whenever. So we'll see if he implements that or what."
You better back it up if you say that, because that is the quickest way to lose some guys on your team. If you say something like that and then you roll back out with the same group and it happens again and you don't get your chance, I'm just saying that I know that is like the ultimate lose a guy.
Hey, but you can't fault him for saying that and doing it though, because we don't get to where we want to go in March if we don't find that side of the ball. And that's the biggest thing now is get it. I know it'll be crazy if we don't see JQ and Shaq getting 30 minutes a game, but if they're not getting stops, who cares what they're doing offensively? We're not playing for right now. We're playing for a couple of weeks from now where we're in the SEC tournament, we're in the big tournament, and we're trying to get wins and make a good run.
To me, that could create.
Say that though.
Say that again.
What?
Also, every team can't say that though. We're not looking at a high school setup where it's like, hey, you get a chance to do this or you do that. It's 0-0. Like you're talking about, like the SEC being jam packed right there, and just a couple of wins from each other, like playing at that position. So like you're really pressing at this point in time. Like, hey, we need to fix this. We got to fix it fast, and we got to be elite at it because we're expected to do that. And also it's the standard that both programs in the state are held to now, which is that's awesome for us. But like, time is precious at this point in time. So I
could be completely wrong. But I think it's the biggest thing is communication and effort. It's not people don't know what to do or how to do it. You put your principles in back in the summer.
Yeah.
You put your principles in. You're fundamentally defense, like what you're going to do defensively, where it's force it baseline, force it, all your principles. The only thing that changes the tendencies, how you guard the team, and you go over those in scouting reports so you can't remember it. So it's not that it's just a want to. Like you said, I don't know. It's up to them. I mean, if I had to, it's like Nate Oates sitting there. It's like, I don't know who, what team, if they're going to play hard this game or not, but if somebody wants to, man, it's just a mindset to me.
And it's not playing hard. I mean, they play hard. You have to play ridiculously elitely hard to win a college football game in the SEC.
It's smart. I mean, you can want it as much as you want to, but you also have to know how to move and play, defensively. I think that's what Auburn does really well. And sometimes I feel like Alabama's guards play well, like they really lack on ball defense. That's just kind of my two cents. Like, well, I really would like to see Quinterly or Shaq get up in somebody from the attack or from the point of attack. A little bit higher.
And they do it sometimes. They just don't
do it
sometimes.
It's just never consistent.
I wish Alabama had a little bit more size that they're the bottom so that you could bring a Keon Ellis up and be that guy at the tip and be like forcing all the action, a certain way.
That would help a
he
lot.
has to slide down and guard these like
besides,
6'7" guys.
This isn't a knock on anybody, but besides, Auburn obviously puts incredible pressure on the ball. Besides, Zepp is a really good on-ball defender as far as moving his feet and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But Wendell Green, KD Johnson, Flanagan, the one thing that they have going for them is they got a 7-1 guy at the rim blocking every single thing. So they all get beat. And if I'm Bruce, I'm like, hey, put pressure on the ball. If you get it, still get stuff. If they go to the rim, Kessler's going to block it.
Alabama's got a big dude down there too. Where's Bediako at?
So I feel like Bediako.
He's coming along.
He can get better at as far as doing that. Team defensively, altering shots, protecting the rim and stuff. But he's been competing a little bit better here. That's one I would say silver lining for Alabama basketball. As far as second half SC play, he's been rebounding well. He's been down there. He's been a little more consistent presence. If the lack of better words in the second half SEC play. And I think that's promising going forward.
I was telling Cody Saturday that, James Rojas, I saw a little interview where he said his whole mission during practice for Alabama is to see how many times he can hit Charles Bediako and make him tougher. So his whole mission, imagine this dude's whole mission in practice is just to hit you as hard as he can. I
did have that when I was a manager at Auburn. Rob Chubb, we had this freshman center who was from a private school in Birmingham. He was like from Africa, Willie Kawasi. I don't know if y'all remember that guy. He was like a pretty big recruit. Chubb just bullied him every day in practice, and it just made him want to quit and never play basketball again. And you figured it out. I think there are two guys on Alabama's team that if the light would kind of flip for them could change all this. And number one, I think it's Darius Miles. And I think the fact that he's been suspended and he's getting technicals and all that just tells you there's a lot of other stuff going on in his head. And the other guy to me is Noah Gurley. I think Noah Gurley can do all that stuff that Riley used to do. Why can't he slide down there and take some charges? He does sometimes. I think he should get a little bit more playing time. He got a couple buckets on the block. He got a bucket in the mid-range against Kentucky, and those were shots that was like at least we know where they're coming from. We can set up our defense. What do y'all think is holding Noah Gurley back from being that kind of contributor? Because as much as I like Rojas, I don't think he can really be the guy. I don't think he's good enough. So what's holding Gurley back?
It's foul trouble. Oates would play Gurley as many minutes as he could play.
Foul and rebounds.
The dude, he just fouls. So picks up some stupid fouls or fouls so quickly, it's hard to get big minutes. And that's really the only time you see his minutes, in the low teens or even in single digits. It's when he just can't stay on the court.
Well, I mean, he's a graduate transfer. How's he not figured that out yet?
That's a good question. I
know guys at this level are putting a lot more pressure on you than guys in the SoCon or whatever.
Yeah, and he may be, he's facing guys that probably maybe with more skill or bigger guys that he maybe didn't have to hit as much at Furman, but I don't know. But offensively, Noah Gurley has hit that stride that we were hoping for. He's been shooting well from outside. His post-ups, he had a few good post-ups against Kentucky that led to buckets 2 straight. And so his offensive game is where we expected it to be. It's just, him being smarter and staying out of foul trouble so he can stay on the court.
He's a good basketball player. Like, I had no expectations for him. You guys were telling you Bama fans were telling me how he was supposed to be this grad transfer and was really supposed to just be a solid rock for the team, and he to me was not. He did not impact the game at all in the first of the year. Really, like he was just you could have replaced him with somebody, and it had no impact on Alabama offensively or defensively. I think he has been really good lately, like you just said, Drew, offensively. But man, I think you said like where can you get more production? Can you get more production from him rebounding? Like I just don't see him being a presence down low where it matters. Where I feel like Bediako has actually gotten a lot better, like just being a big guy, getting a board or maybe altering a shot here or there. Like, is that like what he needs to be doing. I still feel like he's a net positive to the team now, but like he's kind of been struggling just to be like your next big guy.
I think it all goes to matchup. It all plays the matchup. I mean, when you got Oscar, he's 6'10" or 6'9", whatever he is, 250 down low. Obviously, that's not a good matchup for Gurley being thinner and just.
Well, I think Gurley needs to be playing with a big guy. I think he needs to be playing with 4.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm saying that, but they're moving him a lot. When Keon had it going, they moved him a lot to the 5 so they can more play stretch 5, and they will. I mean, they'll start him at the 4 with Bediako, but also I don't know. They're trying to. I mean, Nate really, you can tell. Obviously, Bediako's been playing well, but he really wants to play him at the 5 with 4 other guys, so they have 5 guys that can shoot it, kind of like last year when they put Reese in there. But like you said, if you're playing a big guy like Jalen Williams from Arkansas, or if you're playing a big guy like Oscar or Walker Kessler, it makes it challenging rebounding the ball. But I think they're the one guy that can make an impact. I know y'all talked about it in one of the last episodes is Davidson. And I'm not even talking about on the scoring, but if you watch the Ole Miss tape, he was so dynamic in transition. But the one thing he does so good and like they need is rebounding. He can jump over anybody. And he, you watch last game, he got taken out because a guy went right around him. He missed the box out. Guy got it and tipped it in. It's just little stuff right now that's kind of hindering him from taking that next step. But like I said, he is one of the main guys that's going to make this team go. If he want, it's kind of dependent on him and obviously Shaq and JQ. But I think he's going to be good. But it's just like, got to be consistent.
Hey, before we jump in the offensive side, I thought it was kind of weird that Alabama had told the TV folks that Noah Gurley was going to be starting, and then Jawan Gary started ahead of him. Do y'all know any reason why that might have been? Because on TV they flashed Gurley up there, but Gary started.
No, I didn't even get to see that.
Know.
I'm not sure.
I just thought that was kind of weird. That I mean, they obviously would have told TV, 30 minutes before the game or whatever. So it's kind of weird that flipped.
Yeah.
No injury issues there. Anything wrong with Gurley or anything?
No,
I don't think so.
So, let's just hit on Alabama's offense for just a minute before we move on. I want to go back to Riley on that a little bit because I feel like J.D. Davison sometimes looks so hesitant, whether it be to shoot the first shot and then he takes a tougher shot after he doesn't take the first one, or just driving in and then jumping and turning and trying to find somebody instead of going to the rim. Other than, is it just some kind of freshman wall a little bit like everybody hits? Why does he? Because when he's being hesitant on that end, I think it feeds into like what y'all are saying on defensive rebounding. He's just kind of a little bit hesitant going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I can be hesitant on him. Maybe he missed a shot first time down, or he have a turnover and coming back because he's going to have the ball in his hand a lot. I mean, JQ will slide over to the wing or corner and play off the ball, but there's a couple of times, like you said, he turned and twisted in the air in the first half and threw it away. And it's like, just go up and try to draw a foul. You're so athletic. You can draw a foul or you can finish above them. But I mean, yeah, it can be, I will say, no matter how good you are, I mean, you're going to go through some growing pains as a freshman just because of the adjustment. And the biggest thing, don't matter if you're a freshman to senior, is being consistent. It's so hard to be consistent playing against this level of talent in the SEC, and they scout you. They know everything about you. Non-conference is kind of, people are filling you out, but SEC is so hard because the guys you're playing against are just as athletic as you, just as smart as you, and they know exactly what you're running. So it does make it challenging. I think he's figuring it out, but I mean, he's such a good athlete and good player that he just got to get some confidence. I think confidence is a big part of it.
What'd y'all think of the whistle? I'm a believer that some of the blue bloods get a little better whistle than everybody else. I'm a believer that sometimes the referees can get into that home environment and start feeling it a little bit. I think total fouls, I mean, they didn't call a lot of fouls in the game, period, which is advantage Kentucky. But I think total fouls, Alabama had 16 and Kentucky 7. And Oates mentioned that a little bit, but he said, I'm putting that on my guys. They're not driving in there and creating any contact. How can that be a little bit more of Alabama's game if they've got some good shooters to preach to them to be getting into contact and getting to the free throw line a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm with you. It is, it is wild anytime you think about a team only having 7 fouls in a whole 40-minute game. But, it is due partially to, maybe they're scared to go up against bigger guards because Kentucky's got, 3 or 4 guys out there 6'8" or taller. Maybe that's why they're hesitant about going. But I don't know. the crazy thing
can you manufacture some of that from a coaching point of view? Is there some like certain sets you can kind of draw up or situations to try to get to the free throw line, especially early in the game a little bit, put the pressure on the referee, start making some calls?
Yeah, I think there definitely is. And the crazy thing is Bama shoots a very high percentage from two, and part of it's because we don't shoot really any mid-range shots, but we shoot a really high percentage from two. So it's kind of crazy that we don't attack more. And part of that is, I want to see more doing it is JD. JQ's awesome about getting to the goal and finish, but JD is so explosive and he's strong kid. I want to see him attack, get downhill more. Who cares if they block your shot? Let them block your shot. A couple of times, y'all probably saw if you watched the game, was he'd get to the rim and then try to throw it back out for a three behind his back, and they picked one of them off and led to a fast break. I'd much rather, especially with Sheboy, who's not really a shot blocker, go up and finish. If you miss, you miss. If it blocks, it blocks. But I want to see you be aggressive and try to get a foul, try to get an easy bucket, because once you start making those driving lanes close in, then you can kick it out for that open three.
And then, like I was saying earlier, it lets you set up your defense because everybody's okay with that shot, and they get where that's coming from. It's so hard to set up a defense against a turnover, and it hit Alabama a few times in that game.
Exactly.
I'm not even worried about
too many
fouls.
ball turnovers.
I'm not worried about the foul. I am worried about the fouls, but how did Cal not get a technical? Did anybody see that?
My gosh.
He was nose to nose and headbutt, like right next to
I think that was
Pat
like
Adams.
Pat
Adams.
Yeah. I think that matched his level.
Yeah, I agree, man. Let's get Cal out of here. He needs to be fired.
We knew the suspension was coming. He wasn't getting fired.
Bruce got a technical the same night that Oates got thrown out, and Oates got thrown out for telling a guy to, all right, do it, throw me out, and he got thrown out of the game, and he's headbutting the ref. I'm like, come on, man, this is so. Everybody,
Mav, let me throw this to you because I went back and since I was rewatching the Alabama game, I could see that Ware guy baiting Miles for a while. He was kind of knocking him out of bounds every now and then, being a little physical. He only played a couple minutes. Do you think that is something that people see now in Darius Miles and they could start getting baited a little bit in that situation?
Yeah, I think so. And we've seen it over the last few games. It's just kind of like his demeanor. And I think that why not take advantage of that? Why not take, a guy that plays now a key role in Alabama's offense and defense and, pick on him a little bit. Let's tag him a little bit, see how he reacts. If he stays in his barrel, we'll leave him alone. If he gets out of it, we're going to keep taking advantage of it. And I think that's also a character issue. Justin coming in first year, transfers like, hey, look, I'm not going to be able to get away with this stuff in the future. And he's about to have to suffer some consequences for that.
So I think I saw a stat, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but before he got that technical, whatever it was, Alabama was like 9-16 from three. After he got it, it was probably like a 10 or 15 minute delay. It was like 0 for 6 or 1 for 7 or something. Not saying that lost us the game, but obviously momentum shifted after that.
I was about to say,
I made a note.
As a coach, do you address that in front of the whole team, or do you take him privately?
He's getting addressed in front of everybody. No doubt.
I think so too. I think that's very selfish.
Yeah. We were sitting behind their bench in the Auburn game when he got a foul. He fouled Jabari or he didn't or whatever. This dude took off to the tunnel. Like he just kept walking into the tunnel. Didn't he sit down on the bench and somebody had to go get him? I could just see that from a coach's point of view. Like, man, I can't be dealing with that all the time because that affects everybody else around you.
Yeah, if you're going to walk, keep walking, dog. This is it for you, buddy. Yeah, no chance. And I think that's a character adjustment thing. And I think he'll adjust, but who knows, man?
He's got some skills that Alabama needs on this team with his length and his scoring and everything. But Riley, I think you're right. And I made a note to see what the score and time and place was when that happened. And Alabama was up 41-31. There was 4:40 left in the half. And then with 50 seconds left. And so in 4 minutes of game time, all of a sudden Kentucky's up 47-46. Grady hit that three after there was a turnover. And I thought on that play, somebody from Alabama drove in, and Davion Mintz comes in two hands, like grabs the guy.
It was Shackle.
He knocks the ball away, and they end up kicking it ahead. And then Toppin drives and makes a really nice kick across the court, a skip to Grady, and he makes some ridiculous fall away three, and it was rocking in there. And the game was pretty much over right then.
In the second half, there was one play that stood out. Yeah, it was one big play. And it was Alabama's up 2 at the beginning of the second half, or maybe, 13, 14-minute mark. Can't remember. But Shaq's on the ball. Grady gives him a little forearm chest. Shaq falls. He steps back, hits a three. They go up 1, and they never give up the lead again. And he just starts reeling off 3 or 4 threes straight. But, I mean, it's one of those, like I said, it may have been in charge. It may have not been charged. But Kentucky also obviously won the momentum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shaq had a couple shots that he usually makes. They were open looks on the wing. Open. He just didn't go down. I mean, it just changes everything. Talk about defense, turnovers, whatever. Your guy knocks down a couple more. Same situation in the Auburn game. If Wynn knocks down a couple more, nobody's worried about everything else going on.
Yep.
True. Very true.
Well, let's just move on to a little bit. We'll hit on this quickly since we've gone along. But what were y'all's thoughts on the AP rankings? Both teams with a loss this week, even though Alabama was at Kentucky. So they didn't get penalized at all. They went up a spot, right? They were 25 and now they're 24. And Auburn only goes down from 2 to 3. I think that says a little bit about the kind of the cushion there at the top from the other guys. But just kind of respect, is this something that if 5 years ago it would have happened, if Alabama would have lost the game, Auburn lost the game, they would have fallen further, do you think, than today?
I think the early week win versus Arkansas was a big thing.
State.
Well, yeah. Well, Arkansas was last week, and then Mississippi State this week. I don't know. I think them stringing together some wins and then going to Kentucky, a top 5 team in the nation, kind of helped that. And it wasn't going to hurt you losing that Rupp. It would certainly help you a lot more. But yeah, I think with their resumes and how there were other key losses this week that kind of help them stay put or move up or move down a slot or two too.
Y'all think the non-conference schedule, you talked about the Alabama one so much and those wins, if those wins don't happen and they're not on the national stage, you think Alabama's falling out after a loss like that?
I'm saying 90%. Yeah. 100%.
I don't think we're that close, to be honest, if we don't have those wins. We're certainly not a projected 5 seed in the NCAA tournament if we don't have those wins.
Let me ask y'all real quick, just kind of when you hear that Washington and Wheeler are out of the game, I mean, are you feeling good about it? Or you have confidence that Alabama's going to go in there and win the basketball game? I think it was a 7-point line, and then they took it off the board when they saw that Wheeler wasn't going to play. But kind of a missed opportunity there, right? Do what?
Rupp makes up for those two guys.
I think Rupp I think Rupp's atmosphere, and obviously there's louder. It's loud, don't get me wrong, but when you get stuff rolling, you got 24,000 people in there, it gets loud. But
yeah,
I think winning at Rupp is so hard. And when they got quality players, obviously, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this made our life a lot easier if they're 2 of their best guards are out. But at the same time, when you got Davion Mintz, who's not overly flashy, but he's a solid player that's been in the SEC for a while, with Grady, and Oscar, who's played a lot of college basketball, and they're bringing Toppin and Brooks, but they're so good defensively this year. And I said that Alabama went off in the first half, but you look at the second half. I mean, they held Alabama pretty good. I think they're so good and so long defensively that Wheeler's good, don't get me wrong, but these guys, Davion Mintz, they're so long and so active. It's hard. I mean, Alabama, you saw they struggled getting to the rim. They couldn't get to the rim on their wings.
Yeah.
They're huge. Topping. I mean, like they're physical. They got like a true big now. Like they're back to like a kind of an older brand of Kentucky basketball.
Yeah. I can't say Alabama feel pretty good going into the game though, and those two guys are out.
I certainly did.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, I felt good about it. But I also knew where they were going. Hey, you got guys that can still get the job done. It's going to make it a little bit less stressful, maybe dealing with those two main guys being out. But still, like, it's rough. It's Kentucky, man. I mean, it's a blue blood. But I expected more. I did.
Well, I can't stand Cal, but the way he gets his guys to buy in defensively is, that's that's a testimony to how good of a coach he is, I guess. But like when you got Sheway and going off the Auburn Kentucky matchup, I was thanking God every time Grady didn't shoot the ball because that guy is a bucket and he played that way against Alabama. And I don't know, you just had those guys step up and you like Toppin and the rest of the team and Mintz played really good minutes. I don't know.
I just
it's
just
hard-
a little bit of missed
like-
opportunity.
It's hard for me
And
to knock
toughness.
Alabama, but you've also just I said this earlier, like I feel like you have to keep Alabama at like 25-24 in the top 25 just because they can they proved it, they can beat anybody in the country and they can also lose to anybody in the country. I don't know, like offensively when those three guards are cooking, you just don't have a lot of answers for it. So
is
I got
it
a
like
question.
I got one for you, Riley. Go ahead.
I was going to ask the Auburn guys what they thought. So, is it a concerning to any level that Auburn was winning these games all year, and all of a sudden they dropped 2 in the last 4 of these tight games? Obviously, I know they're on the road. I'll say that. But a Florida team who's been very vulnerable this year, and like I said, these games they've won, they've been winning all year. I mean, they won at Alabama. I mean, they've had some tough places to play. Is it concerning at all?
That is not concerning to me. The result is not concerning to me. What happened at the very end is something to think about a couple times and something that you can address and fix. But the result, no, because I don't think in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of difference in pulling out a Georgia win, hitting one more shot, and the Missouri win, and hitting one more shot, or not hitting it at Arkansas or Florida. What I think has to be concerning is there is a template that if you play big guards and you're able to just play big on Auburn's guards, if they don't shoot the ball well over the top on you, then you can survive. And right now, that's a game plan against Auburn, and you've got a month to fix that. You know what I mean? So that would, or less than a month, 3 weeks from Selection Sunday, I guess. So that would be concerning, not the result. I don't care if you won by 1 at Florida or if you lost by 1 at Georgia or whatever. The fact that, hey, there's an issue there that they haven't come out and beaten somebody by 20 that tried to play the same way, whether it be Missouri, like that. So I think if they go into Tennessee, and I'm not sure, Tennessee doesn't really have big guards either, though, right? Those guys are kind of small.
They're actually playing 2 of the smaller guards together a lot. Ziegler,
the Ziegler guy.
Chandler.
So the next time Auburn faces a guy that's their 1, 2, and 3 are all 6'6", 6'7", and they just say, hey, we're fine playing in the 50s. We might not be that good offensively, but we're not going to have to help much on the ball screens. We can switch stuff, and we'll just try to get around whatever Jabari gets. You know what I mean? That does concern me a little bit.
Survive the first 5 minutes. If you try that and like do trial and error, survive the first 5 minutes, and if you can get away with that, make them make adjustments, and then you adjust after they do. I think that's the way they should approach that, because I do think they're talented enough to guard the perimeter that well.
It's a sneaky tough game for Auburn, I think, is at Mississippi State. I'm not saying Mississippi State's going to win, or they may even not even keep it close, but I think Iverson Molinar is one of the best guards, I think, scoring-wise in the SEC. I think he's tough. But I think
that little point guard's going to get smoked, though. That little lefty, he's not very good.
Yeah, but Tolu Smith is an active big who you can throw it in the post and he can go and make double or counter moves and score on somebody. And obviously Garrison Brooks, he shot the ball well last night. I watched at Missouri, but I mean, he's a streaky 3-point shooter. But they got a DJ Jeffries who's a bigger wing. I don't know. I just think at Mississippi State is really it's not.
They're gritty, man.
Yeah, and it's just a tough.
But it's not the
the
wings. It's not wings. No. It's guys that roll 1 and 2s at you that are 6'6", and that's what Missouri and Florida do. And they just say, "Screw it, if we're not going to be very good offensively." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think Molinar. He'll get. I think I'm a big fan of Molinar. He'll get his.
I think he's a good player.
He's a really good player.
I think South Carolina is a tougher matchup than Mississippi State is for Auburn, because they play that same kind of long guys and just muck it up.
Yeah.
You're talking about 5, the lefty.
Yeah, I don't think he's any good.
Yeah, he came from Columbia High School. You remember that?
I didn't know the Mississippi State little guard.
Yeah, lefty, number 5. They got in the technical last game.
That's in my backyard.
Yeah, he played.
Give the ball to
he played at
Molinar.
Columbia, and then I think his junior year he transferred to IMG and played out from there. Went to Pitt, and then came back. But here's my question. I know Alex listens to the JJ Reddit podcast. When you're in that scenario, when I'm backtracking a little bit and like you're just getting punched in the mouth defensively, and getting scored on, especially in transition, you're not getting back, you're not getting matched, you're not doing little things right. Like, did Avery Johnson or Coach Grant just ever come by and just say, "I hate your face," and just walk away?
I don't think I've ever heard a coach say, "I hate your face."
I've heard Patrick Harding say something pretty similar before.
I was about to say, there's been a couple of guys in this little Zoom call that's been part of the huddles that I've been shoot out in. But go ahead, Cody.
I want to punch your damn ass.
Yeah,
I've heard that one.
I want to punch you. Let me play you. But JJ Redick went off, and I'm veering off a little bit. But he was like, Coach K would come in timeout sometimes and just be like, I hate your effing face, and just walk away.
I think Calipari said that to Pat Adams the other night.
I guarantee you.
That might have been
very
love,
Tony
though,
Barbie thing to say. Do what?
That might have been love, not hate.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I'm just going to stay off that. But let's just quickly talk about for a second what we got coming up. So we're recording this on Monday night. So just briefly, tomorrow night, SEC Network, 8 o'clock, Alabama goes to Vanderbilt. Vandy's last 5 games, they got a win, 72-67 against Texas A&M. They lost 94-80 at Auburn, lost by 9 at Tennessee, won by 8 at home against Missouri, and won by 9 against LSU at home. So they're 3-2 in their last 5, and they've won all their home games. They just hadn't won on the road. Any concern? I mean, that tells me if Alabama's not ready to play, then Vandy will get up there and possibly get a win.
Vandy's tough. Vandy's tough.
Oates said that. He said, if we show up and don't play defense, there's another loss at Vandy. So
the saying is,
especially Pippen can play.
He can play.
Yeah,
that guy's really good.
He'll get to the free throw line. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah.
The saying in SEC on the road in SEC play is the one thing that travels is defense. If you're good at defense, you got a chance to win on the road because. If, like you said, if you give up 90 points on the road, you're not going to win many games at all, if any. So
we should have a feeling if anything is catching on with this Alabama team by how they play tomorrow night, in my opinion, right?
Yeah. I think
it's going to be an experiment game for sure.
Better figure it out because it's going to be tough. I know they got Vanderbilt, and I think they got who else do they have on the road?
We go to LSU at the end of the year.
Yeah. So they got 2 tough road tests left, but we'll see.
And then Auburn plays Wednesday night at home, 7:30. Ole Miss coming to Auburn. Before Ole Miss had lost 4 in a row, and then they beat up on Georgia at Georgia. I think that says more about Georgia than it does Ole Miss. I know Kermit gives Bruce Pearl some trouble sometimes, but is there any reason why Auburn doesn't win this game by double digits?
I hate Mississippi teams, man. They feel like that we're always struggling against them.
I saw the last game.
I do feel like Ole Miss is
5 from the 3-point line or something like that.
I do feel like Ole Miss does have something on Auburn. I'm not saying they'll play well at Auburn, but when y'all go to Ole Miss, I always feel like that's a knockdown drag out.
It's both Mississippi schools. I feel
never
feel good about those.
Marshall Henderson's not walking through that door. So.
No, I don't think so either. So hopefully both in-state schools get their problems fixed a little bit and get ready for some big weekend games. I think Edgardo may be talking me into running up to Knoxville with him. So we'll see. We might do that for Bruce. I don't know. But we'll jump back on after next weekend's games, and we'll be getting ready for the SEC tournament. So maybe we can make a trip to Tampa or something. Yep. But we'll leave it there. Got a bunch of high school games. Y'all check us out tomorrow. We got Gunnersville girls and boys on Power 107.5. Y'all can listen to us tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock and 10:30. But if y'all don't have anything else, we'll get out of here. We'll see y'all next week.